Hello, I'm Sandhya, and I'm reading an article I wrote for the June issue of the STYLANDER, a feature article called Pink, a Cutting Edge Color, June 11th, 2026. Bubblegum, Fiji Barfi, which is shown in the slideshow, fairy floss, sakura, marshmallows, flamingos, breast cancer awareness, the Pink Ladies, the Grease 2 Pink Ladies to be specific, the Pink Panther, Marilyn, you get my gist. Pink, soft, pretty, fluffy, feminine, Mother Earth's first and oldest color. It was also a color originally for men. Dun dun dun! By the way, I am wearing a lovely, gorgeous dress I bought in Oman in 2014 from the Sidab Women's Sewing Group, and there'll be more information about that in the July issue of the STYLANDER because we're featuring Oman. So going back to the article, pink is the navy blue of India. So said esteemed American editor Diana Vreeland, a quote I first heard in 1994. If you're curious, I share the context in the Weller Design Awards 1994. The caption has the link to that video. Watch here on, as I said, on the YouTube channel. It's written in the article. Vreeland meant that in India, pink is worn and used everywhere as an everyday color, unlike in the West, where it is viewed as a trend or occasional color. You know, who decides what is West? Who decided that? That'll be a feature article coming up soon. Stay tuned for that one. The glimpses shown in the video, again, the link is in the caption, are around Rajasthan in 2018 because there's an article in Travelism, Why is Jaipur known as the Pink City? And that will be up later on this week. Jaipur is awash with pinks, but that's because it's a northern India city where pink was used as a color of hospitality before the English royal decree. My apologies, I'm going to read that all out again. Jaipur is awash with pinks, but that's because it's a northern Indian city where pink, I'm going to do that again. Jaipur is awash with pinks, but that's because it's a northern Indian city where pink was used as a color of hospitality before the English royal visit and the Rajasthani royal decree in the 1800s. Northwest India was literally a part of the Persian Empire in 500 BC. Naturally, pink would have been used in India from then onwards, and further reading is in the Travelism Jaipur article. Yes, pink is revered across India, but its significance varies by region. In South India, for example, pink has more spiritual than royal associations. Regardless, in India, pink is worn by everyone freely, without it needing to be a trend. But it's not the navy blue of India. Look, I don't think so. Navy blue is the color of uniformity. India is a multi-human country, and Vreeland was steeped in what I have called white gaze, something which makes an editor insular. Celebrated by the fashion community, and look, I agree, she deserves acclaim, Vreeland's skinsularity, trademarked by me, thank you very much, came to light in a 2023 documentary about the supermodel Donyali Luna. In the 60s, Vreeland, not at all a model, just born rich and connected, told avant-garde photographer Richard Avedon that Donyali, an upcoming star model who was black, was not suitable for what went on to be a historical shoot starring 60s white supermodel Verushka. Avedon wanted Donyali Luna for the shoot, but Vreeland said she wasn't anyone's idea of what they wanted to look like. She's extraordinary, Avedon argued. Vreeland, an ordinary-looking woman, said, so was King Kong. The connotation and Euro-colonial lie is loud to those not tone-deaf from white noise. I will let Neil deGrasse Tyson explain why in this 2015 article, and I've linked to a video where Neil deGrasse Tyson explains who really is closest to being, monkeys' cousins. Anyway, also, I believe it is significant to note that Vreeland's mother, a woman known for her physical beauty, called her own daughter her little ugly duckling. That's gotta hurt a girl, privileged or not. Instead of breaking toxic cycles, Vreeland used her hurt-tinged privilege to sabotage others, despite having been sabotaged by her own physically beautiful mother. Or because of. Hatred fuels ambition more than love, and instead of changing the system, it perpetuates it, sadly. By the way, I have seen that historical shoot many times, and I remain underwhelmed. and I'll write about that in Publisher's Log. The most expensive fashion shoot ever. Yawn. Back to pink, and it being the navy blue of India, Vreeland made the proclamation a decade before the lunar sabotage. British photographer Norman Parkinson was a pioneer of white magazine fashion shoots in exotic locations. I can't do the inverted commas when I'm holding things. This is why we need an autocue, darling, but this is more fun. It's so much more raw and authentic, or whatever that means now. Um, Real. It's so much more what life is supposed to be: human intelligence and imagination and creativity. Going back to the article, blah, blah. Previously, Western fashion photographers had mainly worked from the studio, but Parkinson took his models out of the studio and onto the street, in this case, India. When Parkinson returned from India and on seeing the photograph, Vreeland said, "How clever of you, Mr. Parkinson, also to know that pink is the navy blue of India." Look, I don't know what she sounds like, but strangely, it is Vreeland that has become associated with that India shoot, despite not having anything to do with it. Vreeland was the fashion editor at Harper's Bazaar US, and the shoot was for British Vogue, at that time helmed by the revolutionary Audrey Withers, a journalist, editor, media legend, and a white woman I admire. More info at the end of the article. Withers okayed all of Parkinson's ambitious shoot ideas, including the legendary November 1956 Winter Sunshine Wardrobe editorial. This is a very famous fashion shoot. Everybody knows it. Parkinson's primary association with India, and I'm quoting now from another article, is summer of 1956 for British Vogue's Winter Sunshine collection. The goal was to combine Western and Indian fashion, both in terms of clothing and photographic aesthetics. The most recognized images from this shoot are a photograph of model Anne Gunning clad in a pink mohair coat at the City Palace, Jaipur. And this is when it's all pink. It's all pink. So I've got that photograph there, and I've lost my place. Whoopsies. Let me get back to it. See, this is live. This is live, and there's no post-production on this, so I'm probably going to leave it in. Whoops, here we go. So we're back to it. So the color of the model's outfits, I'm still reading from that article, was usually matched with some key design element of the location of these shoots, as can be seen in the pink walls of the Jaipur City Palace and Gunning's pink coat. These images are among Parkinson's most iconic work. Scholars see this photo shoot and others like it as examples of cultural escapism of the West, the mystified idea of the Orient, the luxury of traveling in a foreign land, and the seemingly apolitical and frictionless notion of using Indian monuments as a backdrop for European visitors. And then, wow. Withers may have been revolutionary. A quote from her: "Vogue no longer merely reported on fashion, but had the power, if it so chose, to change it, to make things happen," because this was during wartime in England. But she was still stunted by Eurocentric perspectives. Although the images are works of art, knowing the time, knowing what Eurocentria did to the people of India, knowing what we know in 2026, the facts and truth uncolor the imagery. You can see Parkinson's images, including contact sheets, here at the Iconic Licensing. We've got that link leading to it. While researching for this piece, I saw that I already knew much of what came up online and realized that my 3 decades of work shared freely via print, web, in-person, workshops, and panels have contributed greatly to the information the infobots collate, which is fine. Knowledge is meant to be for sharing. But oh, the lack of attribution, particularly from non-writer authors who pass off others' writings as their own. It's not AI that's the issue, it's the user. But I digress. Republished here are excerpts from a 2010 article, my apologies, from my old Life and Style blog, The Dusk Zone, re-edited with growth and more knowledge. But first, here's something I didn't know back in 2010. An article from July 10th, 2018. ANU scientists discover the world's oldest colors. Excuse me. I could take a break, but that's boring. Scientists from ANU and overseas have discovered the oldest colors in the geological record: 1.1 billion-year-old bright pink pigments extracted from rocks deep beneath the Sahara Desert in Africa. Dr. Noor Guneli from ANU said the pigments, taken from marine black shales of the Taodeni Basin in Mauritania, West Africa, were more than 500 million years older than previous pigment discoveries. Dr. Guanelli discovered the molecules as part of her PhD studies. The bright pink pigments are the molecular fossils of chlorophyll that were produced by ancient photosynthetic organisms inhabiting an ancient ocean that has long since vanished, said Dr. Giunelli. My apologies if I'm pronouncing this name correctly, but I don't think so. From the ANU Research School of Earth Sciences, and there are links to her. She is a paleobiogeochemist. Wow. And the fossils range from blood red to deep purple in their concentrated form and bright pink when diluted. How fantastic. I mean, the actual color doesn't exist in the spectrum, and I'll get to that soon. So, the article I wrote back in November 2010, November 30th, 2010, to be precise, and of course, June 11, 2026. The dusk zone. I called it Mr. Pink. Firstly, let's understand what this color called pink is. It's a shade between red and violet, and it actually doesn't exist in the spectrum. Pink is scientifically absent from the rainbow because it is a non-spectral color. That is, it cannot be made by a single wavelength of light. It requires a mix of red and violet light from opposite ends of the visible spectrum. Our brains make it exist because our brains need to bridge gaps. I'll explain further. The light spectrum consists of a range of wavelengths of electromagnetic radiation. Red has the longest, shouldn't do that, sorry, violet the shortest, and the colors in between, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, have wavelengths in between the two. When our eyes see colors, it's because our brains are feeling the different wavelengths hitting the retina, the optical satellite dish. The brain then processes this information and produces the visual display that we experience as color. Cool, huh? Our brains create pink because green needs a complementary opposite. If the spectrum were laid out in a circle, red is opposite to blue, orange to indigo, and yellow to violet. But poor green is lonely. It wants a partner. Upon seeing pink, the brain needs to bridge the gap between violet and red, and the visual cortex located in the, let me get this right, occipital, I probably haven't, lobe at the back of the head, sees red and blue, but not green wavelengths, and invents the color they called pink, but not until the 1700s, even though the naming word and verb existed since the 1600s. Before then, pink wasn't seen as a separate color. It was seen as a lighter red, a watered-down red, which is why it was originally for boys. Pink was considered masculine because it is a derivative of red, and in battle, the color of splattering blood is a pink mist. Mr. Pink. Perhaps that can explain why the British call their traditional English hunting coats pinks, even though they're actually scarlet. And there's a link to what they look like. Pink was perceived as a warrior's color, assertive, strong, robust, and dominant. You know, manly. In Europe, blue was viewed as dainty and delicate, all the supposed feminine qualities, virtuous and pure. Of course, mainly because blue was linked to the Virgin Mary in Christian art, despite not being based on fact, because nothing of it is. Anyway, Miriam of Nazareth would not have worn blue. She was a young woman of modest means, modest background, and only the elite wore blue because blue dye was expensive. According to this site, Women in the Bible, this is what she would have looked like, a woman of Arabia. Blue's popularity is also credited to China's Ming dynasty. Red and, therefore pink dye was cheap, but blue dye was expensive. Cobalt had to be imported from Persia, so the use of blue had to be worth it. In the Ming dynasty's L'Oreal ads, only the boy was worth it because it was a royal decree, and there will be a feature article about colors in the STYLANDER July. My apologies. Apparently, and to no one's surprise, war, the very reason pink was originally considered a man's color, was the cause for the gender switch in the Western world. Quite recently, too, 1940s. But why this switch was facilitated isn't factually chronicled. Just information that shows the how, and this is what I've done. I've pieced together the how so that you can see the why. During World War II, 1939 to 1945, the Nazis used a complicated color and shape code system to keep track of their prisoners, all different groups identified by their colored shapes. That famous German precision. The best-known color code was the Yellow Star of David to identify Jewish people. Homosexual males were given a pink inverted triangle, which could be seen as the top part of the star or half a star. and you can read the Pink Triangle Wikipedia page. My understanding is that homosexual males were assigned pink because it is a watered down red, therefore a watered down male. Please note, I support all communities and their rights, but life is binary. However, we evolve with life wherever life takes us, and bigots have underdeveloped prefrontal cortexes and insulae. So there you go. Evolve, people, evolve. The pink half a star is the most popular theory explaining why pink then became easier to associate with the feminine woman. From the 1940s onwards, pink was pushed as a woman's color. But as I mentioned before, why exactly isn't known, just the how. In the US, Think Pink was the marketing slogan to convince women to embrace their femininity. Now that they had their taste of earning their own money and being the bosses and learning, boy things and playing baseball, etc., women had to be de-emancipated, de-stressed, like delousing or a nuclear exposure shower. Not for their benefit, for the returning heroes, thank you. So they could dump their PTSD on the women and get back to making money for the capitalist war wheel. Oh, look, I'm going to need water after this, like right now. May I have some water, darling? Do I look okay? Okay, great. I'm going to keep my angles because, this is...
Yeah, I found the angle.
Okay, good. Because I realize I can look like I'm just sitting in a tent, but this is such a beautiful dress.
It's really nice shot.
Take 1,000. I'd love. Take 5. Take 1. Women were encouraged to be less Rosie the Riveter and more rosy pink cheeks, to be soft and ethereal, wise but delicate, to be feminine. They used department store marketing campaigns and movie stars like Audrey Hepburn to entrench the whimsical qualities of pink into the psyche of a public encouraged to buy new for their country post-war. The 1950s was considered the golden age of advertising. Ad agencies were the influencers. Collaborating with the retail industry, they began systematically categorizing products, delineating pink for girls and blue for boys, which allowed companies to double their profits. If clothing and toys were strictly gender-coded, parents could no longer pass down hand-me-downs from an older brother to a younger sister, forcing families to buy new. Constant wars, tend to make people feel less than whimsical. I think I understand why people continue to have children while in battle zones. Children represent hope and encourage whimsy. Pink is also the color of hope, which is why 1950s Mad Men, and that, of course, is a reference to that very popular show, which I have never watched, the 60s show about advertising males in the 60s. 60s show about advertising males in the 60s. From a 2000s point of view. Anyway, sensing something to exploit, knowing that hope comes from confidence and not weakness, made pink the color of whimsy and softness. In the 1957 musical film Funny Face, its opening musical number, the fashion magazine editor character, supposedly based on Vreeland, but actually based on Carmel Snow, and I'll share some information later, decrees the Think Pink campaign to dictate the fashion tastes of American women. Interestingly, Hepburn and the actress who plays the editor don't wear pink themselves. Watch the Think Pink number, and I link to it in the article. Hepburn's character Jo wears pink once, a soft pink that she wears to open the fashion show, and it's linked to as well. Carmel Snow, by the way, this should be known, but isn't, legendary editor-in-chief of Harper's Bazaar, apparently wrote to Dior, "Dear Christian, your dresses have such a new look," thus immortalizing the famous phrase associated with Dior's 1947 collection, The New Look. And I link to an article I wrote about this. I explore Dior. Pink is a de-stressor color. It is gentle on the neural pathways. Looking at pink feels pleasant because the color physically soothes the nervous system. It is a lighter, softened form of red, allowing the brain to respond to red's warmth and confidence without reacting to its urgency and boldness. Not just looking at it, listening to it too. Pink noise is a thing, and it's better than white noise. And I write an article about that for Publisher's Log, Pink Noise, The Sound of Balance. Pink is such a de-stressor that a certain type of pink has been used in prisons to calm aggressive prisoners. It's called Baker Miller Pink, aka Drunk Tank Pink, and it was invented by Dr. Alexander G. Schaus. I believe a few years ago, one of those Kardashians, one of them, Jenner's, she got excited about it and told all her followers or whatever they are about this color Baker Miller Pink, and she made it popular again. And she said it reduces appetite. For them, it's all about don't eat, be as non-existing. I don't understand. Anyway, that's another story altogether. Back to this article. As Dr. Schaus shared in his 1985 paper, The Physiological Effect of Color on the Suppression of Human Aggression, research on Baker Miller Pink, and we link to the full paper there. Even if a person tries to be angry or aggressive in the presence of pink, he or she or they can't. The heart muscles can't race fast enough. It's a tranquilizing color that saps your energy. I wouldn't put it like that, not sap, but that's what he wrote from a scientific male point of view. Even the colorblind are tranquilized by pink rooms. Schaus found that the specific shade of pink, and to be specific, and I hope I'm saying this correctly, my art director, graphic design husband, R255, G145, B175 to be precise, calmed angry, antagonistic, and anxiety-ridden prisoners. This was supposedly proven with the help of two high-ranking military officer wardens of the Naval Correctional Center, where he first tested his theory. Late 70s, Baker and Miller were the ones who painted the walls of the seclusion room, monitored the prisons, and wrote the reports stating that it worked, and had been the first to support the theory, which is why Schaus named the shade Baker Miller. Did you learn that from that Jardashian chick? Anyway, apparently, despite the power, I shouldn't say that, should I? That's mean. I don't really mean that, but I am a bit shady sometimes, and sometimes it slips. Anyway, because she could have talked about the good effects of it, but instead she talked about how it reduces appetite. So don't eat. That's what she was saying, telling her followers to, starve in the name of vanity. Anyway, apparently, despite the powerful initial effects, substantial evidence suggests these reactions are short-term. According to studies done to disprove its effectiveness, Baker Miller Pink may calm the angry, aggressive, and or anxious person for about 15 to 30 minutes, but after that, the body returns to a state, and I'm quoting now, of equilibrium, and a prisoner may regress to an even more agitated state. I've shared some of that substantial evidence, blah, blah, blah. It says that Baker Miller Pink doesn't work consistently because later scientific studies revealed it lacks a biological tranquilizing effect. Instead of pacifying individuals long term, confinement in the color often leads to heightened agitation. Initial success stories were largely due to the novelty of a fresh environment rather than the color itself. Observers were often aware of the experiment, leading to confirmation bias, where they noticed what they expected to see. So, again, linked to. Look, I have a theory about this, and it has to do with internal vulnerability, about either feeling weak when what they felt was calm enough to unknowingly feel vulnerability, and or being made to feel weak, therefore feminine, if the pink worked on them. The aggression returned and perhaps doubled because of paranoia and because of that perception of being perceived as feminine. Aggression is always a result of another action, direct or indirect, and that's a theory to explore further another time. Fact is, women love the color pink, not just because of nurture. It does make us feel feminine and hot, whatever that means. I know I feel it, hot and soft and safe and bold, as you have read. As you have read, color is not a gender-specific preference. It's mood-dependent. Liking it or not liking pink can be indicative of how one feels about oneself. Girls and women tend to go through phases of hating pink, especially during the ages at which they start asserting themselves. Again, it's about perception. Feminine woman and therefore girly versus the female man. I guess that's what they want us to be. And that's the choice thrust upon us, and pink, already manipulated to woo us, became a way to manipulate us. Look, I went through phases of not liking pink. No, not wanting to be seen as wearing pink. And I love pink, and I've always loved pink. But when I wanted to be taken seriously as a journalist and a model and a singer and a television newsreader back in my late teens and 20s, I didn't wear much pink because of that perception. Isn't that sad? That's not good, but I'll read this article to explain. This article by Zoya Malik in the Harriton Banner sheds more light. It's not that girls hate the color pink, they hate what it represents. Rejecting pink is about identity. It's about wanting to appear serious in a world that equates softness with incompetence. As a way to appear strong and powerful, many girls growing up had a rebellion against pink because of its stereotypes. Many assumed, and this author included, that hating the color automatically makes them less weak and fearful. Many boys also distance themselves from the color pink because of its modern association with femininity, despite their natural attraction to that color, not just because it's a variation of red, but it is also a representation of purity and love. It makes people feel lovely. In 2026, men have a different view about pink, and I'm quoting now, as shared by renowned artist Black Douglas, and that's what I'm quoting, in our Starlight on Black Douglas in the Stylanders May issue. The one question was number 5, what color would you use to describe yourself and why? And Black said, pink, unashamedly ambiguous, a challenge to the conservative mind, a perplexity to the gossips and prejudiced yet striking. Him, Black Douglas, being raised in Penrith, New South Wales in the 1980s, a male didn't dare wear pink as the feeble-minded stereotype was solidified. Lo and behold, his hometown NRL champions now occasionally don pink when competing. So that's quite funny. Up top, I mentioned that pink wasn't officially a color word until the 1700s, even though the naming word and verb existed since the 1300s. To pink meant, and still does, to decorate with a perforated or punching pattern, a term commonly used by 14th century tailors and leatherworkers in medieval England, and most likely originally French. Linguistics experts say the English word was likely adapted from the Old French word piquer, meaning to prick or pierce, hence also a sword-fighting term. This linguistic blend occurred because French-speaking Normans ruled England's upper classes, heavily influencing the vocabulary of skilled English tradesmen. So this is why the zigzag scissors that all sewing enthusiasts, including me, love are called pinking shears. See? Pink, cutting edge. As for how a verb for perforate became the name of the color, surprisingly, despite the piercing and perforating, this part has nothing to do with war and a lot to do with peace and love and hope. The earliest verified evidence of the color word pink being mentioned is in a 1566 book by British man William Painter, and it was used to describe a pale red. But it wasn't until 1755 that the color word was officially recognized in a mainstream English dictionary. Samuel Johnson published his influential book, A Dictionary of the English Language, where he officially codified pink as a color used by painters, solidifying its place in the modern language. Around the mid-1500s, the dianthus flower was very popular in medieval England, not just for its sweet clove-like fragrance and delicate appearance, also because it was considered a divine flower. The name literally translates to flower of Zeus, flower of Dios. Throughout Europe and Greek and Roman mythology, dianthus flowers were used in sacred and ceremonial ways. The divine association carried over into Christianity's theocracy. Centuries later, the much maligned in pop culture carnation, and I have linked to, I think, a Sex and the City episode to emphasize that, which is a specific type of dianthus, Dianthus caryophyllus, became highly symbolic in Renaissance art, where it was frequently painted alongside the Virgin Mary to symbolize divine love. Because the most common color of the popular dianthus was pink, and also because the jagged edge petals looked like materials that had been manually pinked with a blade, people began calling the flowers pinks. However, there is another angle on the pinkvolution, still involving the dianthus flower, which was also popular in the Kingdom of the Netherlands. Known there as anher, it was also called pink ogen, meaning small eyes, because the dianthus has small dots resembling eyes. So this is one Dutch reason the dianthus came to be known as pink. The other reason is that the flower blooms around the time of the Pentecost season in May, and the Dutch word for Pentecost is Pinksteren. Gosh, I hope I'm pronouncing these words correctly. Mentioned earlier, looking at pink feels pleasant because the color physically soothes the nervous system, like massage, like prayer. My theory is that we all like closure. We need the comfort of no loose ends, of certainty. Looking at pink and what that physically does to our brains suggests pink helps our brains close a circle, that it helps us feel certain, therefore safe, therefore calm, therefore a bit hopeful. Who knows? The exact origin of the color word pink may not be clear, but the general consensus is that the color word pink is definitely named after the flower dianthus, and not just because of its color. By the late 1500s, the flower's popularity led to a figurative use of its nickname pink, being used for the highest example of excellence of anything. An oft-cited example is in Shakespeare's 1597 play Romeo and Juliet. In Act 2, Scene 4, Romeo and his pal Mercutio engage in banter, with Mercutio teasing Romeo about what he had been up to the night before, etc. Eventually, Romeo sarcastically, backhandedly compliments Mercutio on his manners, and Mercutio replies, "Nay, I am the very pink of courtesy," meaning he is the very essence of courtesy. Pink here means the height, and considering he was being absolutely vulgar. Quite a divine notion, though, right? Pink meaning the height. Considering that pink doesn't exist, yet we can still see it in our minds. Like hope, like love. And there's further reading about pink. But, well, that's it. It's riddled with mistakes. My apologies, because I'm reading straight from the article. Cold call. And we're not editing this. I mean, maybe I might cut out some bits and pieces, but thank you very much for listening. And please do go and visit the article and visit the Stylander. We've got great articles there, ready and waiting to tickle you pink.